Mercedes is still struggling 5 races into the 2022 Formula 1 season. Its battle with porpoising problems continues with the green shoots of recovery that appeared during Friday practice at the Miami Grand Prix withering once we got to the business end of the weekend. At the start of the season, Mercedes was confident that once it had the porpoising under control, the W13 had the potential to set the pace. But producing the theoretical performance shown in simulation has proved impossible. For the Miami Grand Prix, Mercedes introduced its biggest upgrade package since the start of the season, and while the team salvaged a solid result from the weekend, it still wasn't enough to put it anywhere near the top 2 teams on genuine pace. So the question is, what's taking it so long? Why is Mercedes unable to get the porpoising under control when its rivals have done so, and should it not be throwing parts at the car as it bids to understand exactly what is causing the problems? Mercedes seemed genuinely fast during Friday practice in Miami. George Russell was second fastest in FP1 and then set the pace in FP2. Prior to Miami, the highest a Mercedes had been in a free practice session this year was 4th. Even more significant was its long-run pace. While Mercedes was only 3rd fastest of the teams, it was close to the level of Ferrari and Red Bull. Given Mercedes was running its biggest upgrade package since the start of the season, with a new rear wing, beam wing and modifications to the front wing, in particular the end plates, there were hopes Mercedes might have turned a corner. Mercedes didn't expect the changes to transform the car, and both drivers were slightly surprised with the performance. Lewis Hamilton admitted the car felt much the same as before. The hope was that a combination of the upgrades and the slower track configuration meant Mercedes was not hitting the trigger point for porpoising, the point at which some aspects of the underfloor aero stalls and sets off the repeating loss and recovery of downforce that creates the bouncing in the corners. The Mercedes W13 certainly wasn't porpoising at anything like the level it had been previously. But this all proved to be an illusion. On Saturday, it was back to normal for Mercedes, with Hamilton qualifying 6th, 0.829 seconds off the pace, and Russell eliminated in Q2, having struggled badly with, you've guessed it, porpoising. Russell was actually just under a quarter of a second slower in qualifying than he was during FP2, and he described the porpoising Mercedes as a different beast. The car hadn't significantly changed from day to day, but the grip of the rapidly evolving Miami circuit was increasing. More grip meant higher corner speeds, which appeared to put the Mercedes into the speed range where porpoising kicks in. Therefore, while other cars got faster, Mercedes got slower thanks to the rear end, as Russell put it, hopping around. Mercedes made some small changes for Saturday's free practice session, pushing the ride height slightly lower to generate a little more downforce. Things went badly in that session, so Mercedes returned to the Friday level for qualifying. That the problems remained points the finger of blame at the rapidly improving grip of the circuit. As we've explained in previous videos, the porpoising problems are less severe for Mercedes in race trim, and the team at least got the best possible result on Sunday, with Russell and Hamilton coming home as best of the rest behind the Red Bulls and Ferraris in 5th and 6th places. But that was a result earned through Russell going long on a hard set of tyres and getting lucky with the timing of a late safety car period, plus a bit of help from former Mercedes driver Valtteri Bottas, who made a mistake in the closing stages that cost him what would have been a sweet 5th place ahead of the cars from his old team. We'll get into detail on the Mercedes car upgrades in a moment, but first we just wanted to thank everyone for watching this video and those of you who have subscribed to our channel. To make sure you don't miss any of our coverage of the 2022 F1 season, hit that button if you haven't already. Prior to the Miami weekend, the Mercedes W13 hadn't changed significantly since the start of the second pre-season test in Bahrain, when its new narrow side pod package caused such a stir. There were small tweaks, such as the cutback version of the rear wing for low downforce in Saudi Arabia. Mercedes also reconfigured the vanes on the side of its chassis at Imola. As part of this change, it added a 3rd vane to that arrangement in what was likely an attempt to improve the consistency of airflow to the leading edge of the floor and to reduce the airflow spillage when the radiator inlet couldn't handle the airflow at high speed. The Miami package didn't appear large enough to be transformative, but on Friday there were hopes it had a bigger impact than anticipated before Mercedes came crashing back down to earth. The most obvious change was the long-awaited introduction of its first genuine lower downforce rear wing. Mercedes had hoped to have this in time for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, but for production reasons it didn't have it available until the 5th race of the season. Changes were also made to the front wing. The rear flap was trimmed back for the downforce demands of Miami, which isn't unusual, but far more significant were the modifications to the outer part of the front wing and end plates. In the new design, the outer edges of the main plane are lifted to create a twisting effect. This increases the airflow to the rear corner of the area where the flaps meet the end plate, increasing the outwash. But the real innovation is the way the ends of the front wing flaps integrate into the end plate. Usually this is a simple radius, but the rearmost two elements sweep forward just before the transition. This creates a far larger slot, allowing more airflow to pass through that opening. This airflow will connect up to the tyre squirt, which is the airflow that is displaced when the tyre rotates onto the track surface. By increasing the amount of airflow that goes around the outside of the front tyre, it means there is less airflow going to the inside. Effectively, that means you've increased the outwash. Greater outwash should reduce drag and ensure the airflow hitting the floor and side pods is cleaner, potentially making the complicated underfloor aero work more consistently. If you've got a porpoising problem in that area, this is a good thing to target. The view of the inside of the end plate shows how Mercedes has achieved this innovative solution to the junction of the front wing flaps and end plate. As well as being twisted upwards, the outboard end of the most forward element is a shorter chord, allowing them to sweep the flaps forward to create the opening. The objective here is to try to get the airflow that is being displaced by the front tyre to connect up again behind the tyre. Behind the front tyre is a relatively low pressure area and fairly turbulent, so filling that void will have a drag reducing effect. The package clearly worked well, but not as well as Friday practice suggested. As Toto Wolff said, it was not a groundbreaking solution. The lower downforce package will certainly have helped to contain the porpoising, but the low corner speed, particularly on Friday, appeared to be the key. Of the 5 circuits F1 has raced at so far in 2022, Miami had the 4th highest average speed, slightly quicker than Bahrain, where Mercedes had its strongest performance of the season. So it's perhaps no coincidence that the 2nd slowest circuit of the 5 visited so far this season also produced the 2nd smallest pace deficit for Mercedes. While the Mercedes upgrades worked as hoped, they were never meant to solve its problems, so after the optimism of Friday, it's no surprise Mercedes' pace slipped back for the rest of the weekend. Mercedes remains adamant that the performance potential of the W13 is real, but right now it still can't run the car at the ride height it wants to because of the need to contain the porpoising. Toto Wolff suggested the Friday glimmer of hope proves the car really does have the hypothetical pace to run at the front. But, and it's a huge but, that depends on Mercedes being able to understand exactly why it is triggering porpoising at a lower speed than its rivals and that it can fix it. Hypothetical pace has never won anything. Mercedes' zero side pod concept works superbly in simulation, and the team is not yet willing to abandon this design in favour of something more conventional and potentially easier to make work. Wolff pointed to the extent to which the floor is exposed thanks to the side pod as one of the reasons for Mercedes' difficulties. He says Mercedes hasn't capitulated yet and isn't ready to go back to simpler solutions. And let's not forget, the Mercedes was bouncing down the straights at the Barcelona test with its old side pods too, but Wolff admits that time is now against Mercedes. Persevering with this car concept is of secondary importance to what really matters, truly understanding the problem. Until Mercedes does that, there's no point in committing to an alternative design for later this year, or far more likely 2023. After all, Mercedes didn't see this problem coming and has yet to make significant progress in understanding it. The fact it hasn't been throwing more parts at the car to fix it, something the team could do if certain it had got to the bottom of its malaise, is proof of that. With any hope of re-emerging as a title force in 2022 fading, the W13 is now effectively a testbed. Mercedes must understand the complex, interacting airflows under and around the floor and how that interacts with the rest of the car, or it runs the risk of not only this season being a write-off, but next year as well.